looks like I'm an alternate on one of your.
Sarah, how are you?
You're an alternate on.
That's the only thing I want, I think.
Anyway, I'm an alternate.
Is Christine coming soon?
I think she's.
Oh,
She's virtual. Okay, Christine's virtual. Okay, yeah, great.
Yes, well.
like a stare down the old kid. I did it.
Oh,
Half of one. But I just,
that's.
I really
It's not virtual.
see.
All right.
Because I know it's stuff up there. It's like. It's there. I don't know if it's. Good deals, you know.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here and thank you for attending our last meeting of the year. You will note that I am not Trustee Boland, who is your new chair, but Trustee Boland is currently on vacation. So I'm sitting in for him today. So it's a pleasure to be here and really appreciate that the weather cooperated and everybody was able to get here mostly in person. So thank you for that. I would like to start the meeting off by asking Trustee Rajmani if she would provide us with the territorial management, please.
We acknowledge that the land on which our school and district buildings are situated is the traditional unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin people. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people on the land on which we gather here today.
Thank you, Carthy. Appreciate that. And we were going to have Trustee Primo do the invocation, but she hasn't been able to join us yet, so I will just go ahead and provide that. May we who are assembled here have a true understanding of the duties that are placed in our hands. We seek to have the wisdom to honor our obligations to the Renfrew County District School Board students, families, staff, and communities. As trustees and administrators, we will work together to lead, guide, and support the vision to inspire, empower, and achieve. Okay. And with that, I'm going to move on to attendance. So Chair Boland is not here today. Vice Chair Humphreys is. Trustee Dobson.
Here.
Trustee Doherty. Here. Trustee Gannett.
Here.
Trustee Kaiser.
Here in person.
No. Trustee Primo. Maybe, hopefully she'll be joining us later. Trustee Rajamani.
Here.
Trustee Ruddy.
Here.
Thank you, Christina. Student Trustee Grace Dink. Here. And Student Trustee Sydney Doherty. Here. Excellent. Senior Staff Director Nemi. Here. Superintendent Barnes. Oh, she's away on vacation. Okay, well, sorry about that. Maybe she and Leo are on vacation on the same cruise. Superintendent Poirier. Here. Superintendent Smith. Here. Superintendent Cronwalls.
Here.
And Superintendent Nickel.
Here.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right. Back to my agenda. So I do have a motion. I need a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting on this, unless there are any additions to the agenda, I should ask for that first. If there are no additions, then could I have a mover and a seconder? Oh, Trustee Rajamani and Trustee Doherty, thank you. And do we have Trustee Primo now online? Excellent. Thanks, Jody.
Thank you. Apologies that I just had a hard time finding the email.
That's okay. We're glad you're here. Thank you for that. All in favor of today's agenda then? And that's carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest on today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move forward with the minutes of the meeting for November the 26th. The minutes were included in the as a link in your agenda today. I require a mover and a seconder to confirm the minutes of the meeting from November 28th. Trustee Gannett, thank you. And a seconder, Trustee Dobson, all in favor of the minutes from November 28th. And that's carried. Thank you. All right. So our first presentation is a glimpse into French programming at Mackenzie Community School. So that sounds very exciting. It's always nice when we get, you know, something really happening within the school and hearing exactly how it's rolling itself out. So I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Smith to introduce our guests today.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to welcome Principal Megan Robillard and our teacher Carissa McIntyre from Mackenzie Community School. And they've joined us today, as we've said, to get into FSL programming. Later in the agenda, we have a presentation around our FSL action plan. So this presentation is intended to give you a little bit of a perspective on what some of the pieces of that report and that plan look like in the classroom. So we're excited to share the wonderful teaching and learning opportunities from Mackenzie Community School, and also give you a little bit of an update as well into the expansion of FSL programming beginning in September 2024.
It's gonna wait until we get the presentation up. And we are going to email out the presentation to everyone. Okay, perfect. That's great. Is that the presentation?
That's the last slide.
Yeah, last slide.
I'll do the first little bit of talking, and then Chris is the resident expert, so she'll do the hands-on stuff, and she's got the video prepared. So really, it was just Mackenzie's in an interesting spot because we've got extended French, we've got French immersion, and then we're working our way up. So we're in a really exciting place right now. And so currently, our extended French program is 50-50, and it's grade 4 to grade 8. And then we have the immersion program, the early immersion for kindergarten, and our grade 1s are in the French immersion, also 50-50. So they will be working towards the full immersion program in high school once they work their way up. So we're in that cusp of making things happen, and we're working on a blended schedule. So everybody's we figured it out. It was an interesting challenge this year to get the schedules to work, but I still at times kind of go, wait, who's where? And I have to say to her, what are your classes again? So she's a 4-5 and a 6. Yeah. So her day is split. So she is French full days, and then she's got 2 different teaching partners that have and the cohort split for the next part of the day. So, and our kindergartens, we have 3 JKSKs and a grade 1. So we have teachers that split the JKSKs. So we're in a good spot with our kindergarten numbers as well, which is positive. And so in the next slide, it just has our numbers. So currently we have 39 JKs and 39 SKs that are involved in the immersion. So that's a nice healthy number to give us 3 really nice large classes, but it's a perfect little split. And our grade 1s have had a nice healthy split with a 21-16 as far as immersion and core. So we're not sitting with a really tiny core class, which is great. It just, I think, shows that parents are happy with the options, with the choices. And so far we've had really positive feedback from families. Getting used to the split, like the splitting the teacher halfway through the day. We've had some sort of logistic things we've had to work out. Parent-teacher interviews were a little different because in a good way. Yeah, thank you. We problem solved that one. So our school opted to instead of going classroom to classroom for your teachers, because if someone has 2 students, they might have 6 or 7 teachers. But your French teacher, your blended teacher, but then you'll have your art teacher or your science teacher, and that's. If you've got more than 1 child, you're trying to get everybody in like 5-minute time slots. So what we tried this year was the kinders were in their room as a team, and the grade 1s to 8 were in the gym, and they also sort of sat as a team. And so they would kind of call each other over. So if Chris was in a meeting with the parent and it's like, oh, that child is with Nicole Laba, she'd like, hey, Nicole, and Nicole would pop over and they'd have the interview. So it was a good flow to it. So we didn't have set times, but the feedback from the families was quite positive.
Really positive. Yeah. And they liked that it wasn't so scheduled. So that if we needed a little more time, we could. And if it needed to be 2 minutes, then that's all it was. And so they really liked that.
So the staff, those are sort of the growing pains that come with the blended. There's some logistic things, but the staff have been really flexible and figuring it out. And I think that the parents are, appreciating the team approach to everything. And I think that allows them to see that the French and the English teachers are working together to how their programs blend. They're talking, they're making sure they're working on the same kind of concepts, same literacy goals and things like that in French and English. And that allows the parents to see that teamwork. So I think it's a positive thing. And then we just have a little example just for those of you that like the visual to wrap your head around. I don't know if you could click on the typical schedule, but for example, this would be a student who would be in Chris's class in the morning. And I don't know if it'll open for him, hopefully. Yeah, it's hard to see and you'll get a copy, but so they're morning, they're work, actually you can chat with it. It's your
Yes.
schedule.
So I have my grade sixes in the morning for extended French so I have them for the full 2.5 hour block. They do have an art class for 4 of their 5 days in between our 2 hours. So we have all of the French subjects in that 2.5 hours. So we have French, gym, health, the arts, which the French teacher does that prep in French as well. Social studies, thank you. So all of that happens in their first 2.5 hours. And then I have the same thing in the afternoon for my 4-5s. And then you can see a student would then go to their English class in the afternoon where they would then have language, science, and math. Some of the classes have a prep science teacher, so they might have someone new for science. And other homeroom teachers are doing that science depending on what class they're in. Yeah, so that's what a typical day for a grade 6 extended French student would look like.
If there's questions, you can stop us too.
Yeah.
And then sort of the FSL program, these were some links in here just to some of the focuses that we do have. And I know they're across the board in many of our schools, but we do have a DELF focus. One of our teachers is an instructeur and she's a correcteur. So she can actually assess the DELF. And so she just did some DELF testing in high school and she came back and then it gave her a gauge of where our grade 7 and 8s were at. And she's really impressed with where our 8s are sitting. And so she's chatted with Sarah actually about doing some sort of pre-DELF and some A1 like informal testing just to get them used to it. And they are doing a lot of their instruction is knowing that what the DELF is going to be looking for using that same structure and that same idea. So it's nice that we have that connection to DELF, at a higher level that we can bring into the lower levels and to practice. As well as we also have 2 staff members that are trained, at least 2 anyhow. We recently trained, I think we have more, but we just had 2 that got trained in the neuro-linguistic approach. And it's a pedagogical approach that basically breaks it down very, very,
It's really simple.
really simple, focuses on oral. And as usual in French, we always focus on oral first, and then we work our way through reading, and then we add in the writing. But what this does is it ties it back to the oral, which is a step we often forget. And I'm guilty of that as I was a French teacher as well. And you do, okay, we got this, but they actually roll it back to the oral and just the continued focus and a very direct, explicit teaching where you're using the same language. Is proven to be very effective. And so the training is there. And so right now, the most recent teachers were a JK, SK1, and then a 4, 5, and a 7, 8. So, we've got teachers who are teaching all of those grades in a similar style. You just elevate it, of course, depending on the age of the kids. So it's a really great approach that we've seen that has had some success so far.
Yeah, I've even used it in core French too as well, actually.
Yeah, and it can be used
Anywhere.
You can chat to those 2 sites.
Yeah, so the next 2 sites are sites that me and my fellow colleagues are using a lot. The first is Lalelo, and it's similar to the Lexia, which is the English structured reading program, but this version's available in French. And the thing that we like about it, which kind of ties to that neuro-linguistic approach, is you can actually assign targeted vocabulary. So if we've already instructed, say, on how to describe things I ate on the weekend, I can then go to Lalelo and assign foods to them to review now in text. It has an auditory component and a speaking component all within the program. And then as a teacher, I can see afterwards, it points out like who's struggling, how successful they were with it. I can look at the actual assignment that they worked on themselves to see where the gaps are and what we need to work on next. So we've recently just started using that this year, actually, and we're really enjoying that. eDello is one that we all use and love. It's great because it has all educational areas. So it's a really great way to do co-curricular with French and social studies, for example. So in the earlier schedule, you saw my students start every day with a video response. So oftentimes that video comes from eDello. And we were looking at Les Autochtones, so Indigenous peoples, and they have lots of different series, all in French. So one we talked about was music, and it talks about music styles, and then it had a legend of music. And then we will always have like an oral response to that video. So it not only is engaging the listening aspect of the French, hearing other accents, other voices, but then students engage with that content afterwards.
Feel free to ask questions.
Yeah.
And that's what Carissa put together a little, I think it's about a 5-minute video just to see, ideally we would have had some students here modeling for you, but coming from Deep River, we just thought we'll put it into a video, for you guys. It's just this little video, and maybe you can watch it and then Carissa can chat to, if you have some questions about kind of what was happening in the video. Then.
Yeah, I will say our students were used to using the French immersion vocabulary. So these are extended French students, but they are using the word French immersion.
So they'll say the French immersion program.
Yes.
It's just, that's what they call it, but I recognize that it is actually extended, but the language that they're using is immersion, so.
Yeah.
I think the French immersion program at our school and our board is a good thing because it will help kids learn different language and be exposed to different cultures.
It helps you get prepared for jobs in the future that need you to be bilingual. And it's easy to just learn another language in school.
I like French immersion because I like learning new languages. And French immersion is good because it teaches me a new language and it'll help me get a job in the future. You can travel to France and other countries that speak French and you can understand them.
And not be completely clueless.
And also will help us get jobs in the future and possibly get into better colleges and universities.
I like being in French immersion because it's just fun, but also you can help others with what they want by being bilingual. I'm in French immersion because it's fun and also you can do French plays and those are really, really fun. We like French.
And it's giving the younger generations an opportunity to explore languages and learn how to talk to different people in different places.
I'll do the
Grosse nouvelle. Aujourd'hui, nous avons Coufrac de Coufrac et Bishop Petit pour un débat en les devoirs nécessaires ou inutiles.
These are Lord, and I have these are Lord. No. What did you say? These are Lord, and I have No.
The French immersion program is of incredible value for our students. Beyond simply learning a second language, French immersion opens doors to global opportunities, fosters creativity, and enhances critical thinking. French immersion is much more than learning vocabulary or grammar. It's a gateway to bilingualism. Students gain a competitive edge in their future and academic and professional lives. By learning French, students connect with rich cultural heritage of Francophone communities worldwide. Additionally, students show that learning a second language enhances problem-solving skills, memory, and creativity. French immersion isn't confined to the classroom. Our program integrates meaningful, real-world opportunities to apply language skills in dynamic and engaging ways. Last year, our French immersion class participated in Entrepreneurs for Change. Through this initiative, students used their French skills to create innovative businesses. They developed pitches, collaborated, and presented in French, preparing them for real-world interactions and inspiring them to make a difference. They learned how to sell the products they created and have interactions with potential customers in French. This year, students are participating in learning coding languages as well as programming principles in French. Students integrate two 21st century skills, language proficiency and technology literacy. This approach empowers them to think critically and express creativity in both digital and linguistic contexts. French immersion nurtures a love for learning and a creative mindset. By tackling complex projects like designing robots or programming interactive apps, students build confidence in their ability to solve problems and adapt to new challenges. Learning a language fosters curiosity and encourages students to see the world from different perspectives. This openness inspires them to be lifelong learners and global citizens, ready to engage with diverse communities. French immersion is more than an academic program. It's a transformative experience that equips students with tools to succeed, inspires innovation, and empowers them to lead in a multicultural, interconnected world. By offering programs like Entrepreneurs for Change and Coding in French, we are providing authentic and creative learning opportunities that will have a lasting impact. Thank you for your support and dedication to this program. Together, we are shaping a brighter, more inclusive future for our students.
Says it all. We tried to include kind of different parts of the classroom. So especially when you could see with the younger students. So that's the kinder French immersion program. So now my extended students get to be buddies to the kinders. So that's really exciting. And then this year we are doing a STEAM or a STEAM in English coding project. There was a government fund for it. So my classroom was testing it out as kind of a trial. So that's what you could see in the image there. So we had to go through how to follow instructions in French, give them in French, and then be able to do that to program the robots all in French.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions, comments from everybody around the table? Yes, Trustee Kaiser.
Mentioned several times, my youngest one of my young grandsons, I think he's 8 or 9, is in the French program. And it's incredible that, you talk about the advantages, of being able to speak French. I wish I would have done that when I was younger, but we're out somewhere and we'll bump into one of his classmates or a teacher, and he's just off in French, just totally conversation in French, and I'm just sort of, and then they'll leave and he'll start talking to me in English, and I'm fascinated by that, and that I think is the ultimate goal for some of these students, to be able to do that. And as my colleague said, give them an advantage down the road. So 2 questions. What is the biggest challenge you have with your Mackenzie program, and what is the biggest the biggest challenge and the most rewarding thing that you have out of the program?
For me as a teacher?
Sure. Yes.
I will say the change of our scheduling. So last year I had a little bit more time with my students, and me and a colleague shared the same room. So we had the same kids all day. We had a really unique, excellent relationship, and we did a lot of team teaching and kind of crossed English and French a lot in our room. So I'd say that's the thing I miss the most, because we're still, I'm doing procedural writing and she's doing it, and we're doing all of those things still, but we're missing that kind of like community piece in our room that we used to have. I'd say that's the biggest challenge and change. The most rewarding piece is definitely the students that suddenly, like, it's like a light switches and they just do exactly what your grandson is doing and just start speaking in French. And so having those moments where, we're working, they're maybe kind of quiet, and then suddenly they're speaking French, and it's like, oh, that's so exciting. So those moments are incredible. Yeah.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
Just
Trustee Primo?
Thank you. I did have a question. How are you engaging with parents for monitoring the strength of French in each classroom? So that parents can kind of maybe bolster things or work on problem areas?
Yeah, so I send out a monthly newsletter, for example, and I always have an area of things if parents want to extend their learning at home. So for example, this month we were working on following instructions for the coding, which led to then following instructions for reading a recipe. So we're baking on Thursday, and they all had to look at a French recipe, follow those instructions, and try and simplify it for a way that they could really communicate the steps themselves. And then they're making a little video of their own cooking show and they're explaining how to make that recipe. So in my newsletter this month, it was like, try cooking with your children at home in French. Let's look up a recipe, like work through it together. So I always try and put a connection with what we're doing in class. So if families want to extend at home, then they're able to.
Great. And I have a follow-up question for Principal Robillard. Are you implementing that across all of the different ages, ensuring that from kindergarten to I think it's grade 8, that children are being tracked on how their strength of French and their familiarity with the language?
I don't have anything precise in place, but it's definitely something to kind of look at to make sure they're growing. And I think a lot of it will be based on the numbers and sort of the data with the numbers as they go along, if they stay in the program and their success, but definitely something to consider. And I don't know that all of the teachers are sharing the same information that Chris is sharing with families, but that's definitely something for me to follow up with staff to make sure that they are putting things in their newsletters or in Google Classroom for families to ask some questions at home, or so they're aware of what's happening in the classroom. So.
And some of
Thank
that
you.
comes from the parent-teacher conferences too. Oftentimes a parent will ask then, like, how can I support at home? I don't speak French. So I usually give those suggestions. And oftentimes, especially in the beginning, like asking questions is obviously one of the first things you can I go to the bathroom? Can I sit with this? Can we? And so that we often will play a game like Guess Who or even Go Fish. And so we work with that question structure. So then I always say, okay, go home and teach someone at home how to play the game in French with you. So if parents are asking, then that's usually when that would come out as well.
Thank you. With the parent-teacher interviews, as many of my fellow trustees know, I have a junior kindergartner, so this is all new to me as well. But I did find that I wasn't able to speak with the French teacher because of the setup. Is that something you might change for next year?
Okay, I'm surprised at that actually, because she should have been
With the English person.
Yeah, she should have been in the room with English, but it's because they're tag teaming with two others. So maybe when you showed up, they were in the other room. So yeah, it's not a perfect setup, and that's the thing with the blender. We're trying to figure out what works. And I know we're chatting with the other elementary schools to see. We all kind of tried different things, and we're all kind of meeting to see what seemed to have the most success. It's one of those hard things to land on a perfect solution, but definitely good feedback to have.
Thank you, and thank you for the patience of my fellow trustees and asking some personal questions. Thanks.
No worries. Trustee Gannett, you had a comment?
I just really like the presentation because there was snippets of very specific things in there. But the thing that really caught my attention was the excitement. If you can build the foundation of excitement, then the result is like his grandson. So, I mean, that really means a lot to me because back in the day, as one of my fellow trustees used to say, back in the dark ages, when we took French, I guess to put it simply, my memories of it is just more boring and less excitement. So I'm glad to see that that's pivoted. And also, it's nice that the kids that were part of the presentation stressed the fact that it can open a lot more doors when it comes to your future. And my kids are living example of that. My wife, I was lucky, my wife, her first language was French. So I've seen it, I've witnessed it, where there's a lot more avenues and doors open and possibilities. And I've said to parents that whose kids, they're thinking of putting kids into more French. My kids are no smarter than yours. They just have a lot more variables, a lot more doors open. So great presentation. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from anybody? Okay, I think we're good. Thank you so much, Carissa. Thanks for having us. Beautifully done. And you're right. I think just to reiterate what Trustee Gannett says, the enthusiasm and excitement that you can see in these kids' faces, and yeah, so obviously you're doing a great job encouraging that and planting that that thought process for them. So thank you for that. Thank you for your presentation today. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
You don't mind if we don't?
I was gonna say.
No problem. That was great. Yeah, nice to see that excitement for sure. Okay, next on our agenda is the RCDSB annual report for 23-24, and I will turn it over to our director, please.
Thank you, Vice Chair. My computer has decided to do some sort of update right now. So
Aren't you lucky?
do
Do you want mine?
Sure, that'd be great. Oh, here we go. Actually, it's gonna let me in. Let's see here. Sorry about this.
It happens
I
at the
know.
worst times, right? Oh,
And then when you rush, you don't get your password right. That's right. Oh, it's still going. So you help yourself. Okay.
what do you need?
So the report itself is just to introduce the our CDSB annual report. This is a ministry requirement that every Ontario school board submits an annual report about their previous year and highlights all of the great work and learning that's happening across the district. And what I will say is that this year, the approach that we took was we wanted to bring you what I will say is it's a draft, but it's very, very close to being completed. But we thought in case anyone has any questions or any little catches, we would wait to finalize it and put it up on our website until after you've had a chance to preview it. And so all of Executive Council is going to sort of walk you through some pieces. We're not going to review the whole thing with you. And so this year we decided to start the report at the beginning with a group of kindergarten students and then end the report at the end with one of our graduating classes from last year, just to show that 14-year journey that our students are spending in our CDSB. We have a table of contents. The annual report is organized around the 5 areas of the strategic plan, and we are going to highlight some specific pieces. And I'm going to turn it over at this time to Superintendent Cronwall, who's going to take us to page 4 for the first highlight.
So I'm going to talk to page 4, which is community engagement, partnerships, and education for reconciliation. So I'm incredibly proud and inspired by Renfrew County's District School Board's Indigenous team and our meaningful partnerships with with community members, staff, and students. Together, we recognize the meaningful community connections and collaborations are essential to responding to Truth and Reconciliation Commission's Call to Action 63, which focuses on building student capacity for intercultural understanding, empathy, and mutual respect. The past year, Inspired Learning has guided our efforts to integrate Indigenous ways of knowing, teaching, and living into classrooms across grades and subjects. Collaborating with 40 First Nations, Inuit, and Métis community members, including elders, artists, and advocates that have enriched the educational experience and connections to community for students and staff alike. An example of the power of community partnerships in RCDSB is the ongoing Baby Moccasins project facilitated by Judy Ellis and Carrie Saracen, both from Algonquins of Pikwakanagan. This project invites grade 9 art students to create baby moccasins while learning critical and cultural teachings such as respectful harvesting of materials, traditional protocols, and the importance of reconciliation. Students connect these lessons to broader topics like residential schools and the 60 Scoops, the moccasins representing walking forward together in good relationships, are gifted to the families of newborns at the Pembroke Regional Hospital. And ultimately, the work demonstrates that community engagement and partnerships are essential to reconciliation and creating inclusive, inspiring, and learning environments for all.
And so for the one that I'd like to highlight is on page 5, Tools of the Trades Boot Camp. And when you review that, I mean, a few things that really jump out, I think it just in terms of our multi-year strategic plan, in terms of achievement of excellence, obviously through this providing authentic educational opportunities and the inspiration as well for community engagement and partnerships. One of the things that mentioned here was in this, it spoke about only 20 tools in the trades boot camps across Ontario. So that's actually driven through something called the Skills Development Fund. So it's an initiative where the ministry requires a partnership with another organization just to help drive Ontario's economy. And just sort of as a fun fact, the first time that they did something like this was actually in Renfrew County. And let me just make sure I get this right. So it was back in 2021 over at Fellows. and over at RCI. So Fellows was a landscape and horticulture, and RCI was a millwright trade. So the first time that they ever attempted something like this years ago was actually with us. So that's an interesting one. So with this though, we had so the partnership was between the Ministry of Labor and the Support Ontario Youth, which is an organization that really focuses on apprenticeship, which is through this Tools in the Trade boot camp. And in terms of the impact from this, so it does mention here that there were 42 students, primarily in the SHSM, in the SHSM program, mainly in construction. But what's really striking to me when I spoke a little bit more with our lead teacher on this, Alex Harris, was that over 25% of those students are now in an apprenticeship program or in the apprenticeship process, which is the highest standard of co-op education. So, and really, I mean, we talk about pathways, like they are on the pathway right now as we speak. So I think that's a real impact in terms of this type of boot camp, if we want to call it that, but this type of apprenticeship program that had a real impact on our district.
Okay, so now we're going to move to page 8. And I'm just going to speak a little bit to the story called Grade 7 and 8 Mental Health Modules. I'll give you a little bit more context to this. So the introduction of mandatory mental health learning modules for grade 7 and 8 students is part of the ministry PPM 169 and our requirements outlined under that PPM to make sure that we have mandatory mental health literacy learning for all students. And this work also does support the goals of our strategic plan in terms of evolving the Lead with Care model, and also coincides really nicely with our mental health strategy, which one of our goals is really making sure that we're raising awareness around mental health supports and services. So this mandatory requirement for learning in grade 7-8 was in place as of last year. So earlier in the year, last year, we put together a nice group of educators to help facilitate that professional learning for all grade 7 and 8 teachers across the district. So they all had an opportunity to learn about the content so that they became comfortable and confident with being able to deliver that material. And we did monitor the implementation and did a report to the ministry on that as well. And we had 100% success rate. So that means that every class that was supposed to do that learning in their grade 7 and 8 class did, and were able to give us some feedback on it as well. The feedback on both the materials and the implementation has been only positive that we've heard so far. And teachers had strategies in place to get exit cards from students about their learning as well. So the modules are aligned with the grade 7 and 8 health and phys ed curriculum. So they learn about the stigma associated with mental illness, but they learn about the continuum of mental health and mental illness. And also in preparing for adolescence, they talk about building strategies to support their own mental health, including self-care strategies to maintain good mental health, and also to know where and when to seek help for themselves or for others that they may be concerned about. Information on what was being talked about at school was also sent home, so to support ongoing conversations with the learning at home. Just as an additional point, this is mandatory learning for grades 7 and 8, but mental health promotion is taught throughout the grades. And there actually has been an expansion this year too, in terms of mandatory requirements, that there's now a mandatory requirement on mental health that's taking place in the grade 10 careers curriculum course. So we've been supporting that implementation currently as well. Our team has identified a bit of a gap in between grade 7 and 8 and grade 10. So they're currently working with grade 9 health and phys ed educators to make sure that we also have learning taking place in the grade 9 classroom that connects to the curriculum, but helps to bridge that gap between grade 8 and then what they learn in grade 10.
Okay, and then the next piece is I'm going to highlight is around primary literacy, and it is found on page 10 in the report. The information on primary literacy does highlight our first year of using the early reading screener from K to 2, and it is in response to PPM 168. And PPM 168, as we might recall, is also in response to the Ontario Human Rights Commission released their report on rights to read. Important pieces that take place through the use of in response to the PPM is the use of an early reading screener. And the Human Rights Commission did report that when we do screening in schools early on, then schools can identify students who are at risk
And being able to do so then will prevent them, of course, from having other reading difficulties later on. I will highlight that last year being the first year that we were using and responding under PPM 168, but I do know the year previous to that, between the program department and special education department, they had already just started to roll out the screening process in response to the Ontario Human Rights Committee and their recommendations. I also want to highlight that what's highlighted in the report is the importance of the training that's been happening with staff and seeing a shift in how the staff are able to learn how to use the screener, but then take proactive steps to be responsive to address gaps early on, similar to what the recommendations are. Of note, also in the PPM, they do provide school boards with suggestions and recommendations around which screeners to use, how to use those screeners, and other recommended practices.
The next page I'd like to highlight is page 11. This is just going to be a quick highlight because this is highlighting some parts related to French as a second language. We heard some highlights related specifically to Mackenzie Community School, and we're going to have a staff report from Sarah McPhee in a few minutes about French as a second language as well. And so she will review the DELF results, which we're very proud about. So she will review that with us in a few minutes. So we're going to continue to pages 13 and 14. These are capital projects highlights. Not obviously, you've seen the whole list. Our facilities department does a ton of throughout the school year and especially in our summer months when our schools are closed. But we did want to highlight some of the great work that our facilities staff was able to accomplish during the last during the last year. And then pages 15 to 17 summarize our student achievement data, which includes EQAO, and you received a detailed presentation, a report a couple of months ago about our EQAO results. Also in May, every year, we will bring you a graduation data report. So this past May, you received that data as well. And so this data has already been presented to you, but I wanted to highlight it for you. And that essentially is the annual report in a nutshell. What I would like to say is that it really is a celebration and of all the hard work and learning of our staff and our students. And we're really grateful for all of the great work that they've done. And this report only captures a tiny little sliver of all the wonderful work that's been done. And we try to pick, different highlights from across all of the different priorities and connect them back to the strategic plan.
Excellent. It's tricky, isn't it? Because there's so much happening and so many great things going on.
Yeah.
Questions, comments, wonderings about?
Very good report. And it looks a lot of hard work went into this. Yeah. Very good.
Trustee Kaiser.
I wanted to address the mental health thing, Jenny, that you mentioned. The two things, one is you said the stigma, right? So something that I've learned, and I'm a firm believer, sometimes you need to experience something to really understand it. So I think you know what I've been going through. But the stigma, I think, I always thought of stigma as, what I thought of it for other people. But the stigma is also what the individual thinks about it themselves. And so what happens is, and I'm sure you're well aware of it, and my question will be, what are we doing to look at this? I know it's not technically part of the report, but, to me, the toughest thing is to seek help, right? If you feel the stigma, you're not going to ask for help. Somebody needs to kind of push you or recognize something and guide you a little bit or point you in the right direction, as I said. So how are we looking at that in the mental health picture with the students?
Well,
You know what I mean? Am I explaining myself? Yeah.
I think one of the priorities is normalizing the conversation
Okay.
and making sure that it is part of the ongoing dialogue that's happening in the classroom and incorporating different pieces of raising awareness. And right now, we're also thinking, we're trying to help everyone in our district understand the mental health continuum, so that we're thinking about, there's a continuum between good mental health and mental illness. And that there are different places where we may be at different times in our life on that continuum, depending on the circumstances. And the strategies that we require may differ depending on where we are in that continuum. So we recently just, we're delivering monthly learning to all of the teachers in the district. And that was one of the pieces that we just most recently did, but it's helping them to raise awareness so that they also can monitor the students who are in front of them, recognize signs when people may be, may need extra support, and then making sure that everyone in the system knows where those supports can be found and how to access them. So that's a big focus. We have educator advisory groups who are really working on that. Like, what's the learning for every grade that's age appropriate? And also, how do we make sure that everyone is aware of how to access, but also how to notice and to be able to refer.
Yeah, the notice thing, yeah, that's,
Yeah.
and you know that commercial, have you seen that commercial where they're always, they're asking, how are you? I'm fine. But I mean, the idea is,
Yeah.
that's that stigma of that person, they're not fine, but they're afraid to show it's a weakness, right? That's the stigma, right? It's a weakness if you ask for help. So I feel like there's that little step in there that somehow, I think you just mentioned it, identify, and then I know that it's a fine line for what the board can do and what they can't, what teachers can do, what they can't, but to push a little bit. Because once you take that step, then you realize, oh my goodness, now I'm getting the help I needed. And again, I agree with you, the mental health versus mental sickness, yeah.
I will say that even the project that Grace just worked on as well, was a really good example of normalizing. She worked on making sure that we're creating student-friendly resources at the secondary level, right, Grace, in terms of where to go for support, but also just the language that was used in the work that Grace created really sought to make it okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, just to make comfort in the fact that if we're accessing resources, that's a good thing. And that, I'm hoping, is a really powerful thing, and it's being shared across all of our secondary schools in student-friendly and language, which was important to you, I think, Grace. Right?
And if I could add on, part of that resource was sort of bridging that gap on the part of individuals. So it's making it easier for students to access help in a faster way, and also just helping raise awareness of resources. And so a lot of this project is mental health posters with some crisis lines, as well as a QR code that students can scan in one step, and it takes them to a more complete guide of mental health resources available to them, both in school and out of school, whether it's hotlines, out of school hours, or in-person resources like the Renfrew County Youth Wellness Hub. And so part of that is, on one hand, helping decrease that stigma, but also just making resources more accessible for students so that it's easier for them to seek help if they choose to.
It's ongoing work that's important.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
And answered my question. So I was going to ask Grace to speak to that topic because we spent a fair bit of time on mental health initiatives at the Student Senate meeting. And I can't speak highly enough about the work they're doing and the response that we got from the Student Senate.
That's great news for sure. Is there anything else you wanted to say about that, Grace?
I'll touch on it.
Okay, great. Mike.
Just more of a comment. Back in the day when I was in high school, there was a lot of talk about alcoholism. As I got older, there's alcoholism and drug use and abuse. And that's still ongoing. But now we've gotten to the point where, as example, it was, you mentioned grade 10 career civics. It's sort of normalizing the continuum of what's being discussed. So I think I left the board as a staff member about 7-8 years ago. And that continuum isn't to any degree what it is now. I see that just through our discussions. And that's good that continuum of normalizing. So you'll get sometimes a peer that talks to their friend and their friend says, no, I'm not. And maybe the peer knows some danger signs. It might go to a staff member that they trust and say, hey, look, they're not ready yet, but there's a concern here. So all that interconnected spokes, all those interconnected spokes, we have a tendency of having an opportunity to help them more so and sometimes earlier, as opposed to, you brought up a good point, that commercial's bang on. How are you doing? Okay. So all that underlying current, I just find the continuum is getting that much more impressive through what Grace is doing and what you're doing. And sitting on SEAC, I see that evolution. So thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah.
No one else. So the primary literacy, is anyone here was around when Superintendent Ringlet was superintendent? No?
Oh,
Shelley, were you?
well, I was at the school as a teacher.
I just want to make sure I have to get the story perfectly. But anyway, he brought us, I've always remembered this. He brought us a report from the state of Illinois that, I think I might have mentioned this before, that they looked at, if I remember correctly, grade 3 literacy scores in the state to determine how many jail cells they would need in their jails X number of years later, because they had a correlation between literacy and, ending up in jail. So I always remember that. It was quite well, Andy Ringlet.
Yes.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but I'm glad to see that the primary literacy is in this report as a focus. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this actually tells a great story of what's been going on the last year. I know the EQAO is always just a little bit of a concern, right? But we also, I'm sure it's going to improve. I don't think there's any doubt with the screening we're doing and the extra work that is going into that. I'm sure that will come along. I have no doubt about that. And it's wonderful to see the DELF results are amazing, and the OSSLT too are also really strong. So we have a lot to celebrate. Our grad rates are good, so we have a lot of celebrations to be very proud of. That's for sure. And I love the report. I think the pictures just are just so great, and it's so easily read. So at this point, it's only going to be online, right? We're not doing any hard copies, I don't think.
So that is something that we wanted to sort of bring to the Board of Trustees. What we've noticed is a decline in the need for paper versions. And so in terms of the number of print copies that we would make, we're not planning on making any for here, the board office. We might print one just in color and file it so that we have it on record. We'll do that for sure. But not making the glossy version. Also because we're looking at transitioning to more of a digital version where there will be more hyperlinks to additional information and video. And so we're going to transition to a more digital version next year. And that's why we're sort of in a transition phase. But we wanted to check with you to see if you would like a print version in color. Because if you would, we can print one for you. But for our use, for staff use, we're not going to print any other than one for filing for historical reasons.
Yeah. Thoughts from around the table. I
Just
Go ahead.
thoughts. I mean, I'm not the most computer literate person, but I do think that besides the cost savings, I do think that unless someone specifically asks,
yes.
I like where you're going with this. So if someone makes a specific ask, sure, we'll give it to you. But I do think it's a good idea for cost and time and all the other things that we're thinking of. Good idea.
I know we all do like hard copy things, but I also know that my previous annual reports, I must admit, are sitting on my, the shelf in my office, and I probably haven't looked at them. I might actually have one in my. But anyway, I haven't looked at it very much. So, if I know it's online, I can access it anytime. And if something has to be updated, then that's a bonus as well. So it looks like we're probably okay. And as you say, Mike, if somebody really wants one, just talk to Shelley and she'll get one printed off. It might not be a glossy version, but that's okay. It's really the information, right, that we're most concerned about. So I think that's a wise idea as well. Okay, thank you very much. That was excellent and nicely put together. I know it's a lot of work to try to gel it down to the bits and bobs that you have, but I know there are guidelines from the ministry that say this is how you have to do it as well. So, but it's great. Really great.
Can I give one more?
Absolutely. You
Shout
can.
out.
Absolutely.
So our communications officer, Connor Bunn, who is online tonight, he's the one who actually created this document, and it's so professional looking, such a great balance of visuals and the key information. So I just wanted to really commend him on the work on the actual document.
It's really readable.
Yeah. Just wanted to share that.
It's very readable and very, very attractive. So it takes a good skill set to do that.
Yes. Yeah.
That's for sure. Okay, we do have a recommendation on this annual report that the Renfrew County District School Board received the 23-24 RCDSB annual report. So it's just a matter of receiving it. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Trustee Rajamani and Trustee Doherty, thank you. All those in favor of receiving this annual report, and that is carried. Thank you very much. So there we go. Okay, on to committee reports to the board. And you'll notice what we're trying to do now is really list all of the various committees so that if you've had a meeting since our last board meeting, we won't miss you, right? We don't want to miss the opportunity to have an update. So you can see that some will not have a report, but at least it's there. So in the future, we'll also make sure we capture it. So the audit committee, of course, doesn't have anything. Parent involvement committee, Kristen, did you want to give a bit of a report on that one? I know you were there for that.
Absolutely, I'm happy to. So on December 2nd, we had a parent involvement committee. We had 3 parent representatives from 3 different schools attend. They were all virtual. And so I was alone in this room and they were all virtual. It was interesting. So we have had more than 3 to 4 schools represented at PIC this year. And so what I'm going to do is from January until March, I'm going to attend as many school council meetings as possible, go and introduce myself, talk about the strat plan consultation that's coming up in the spring, and recruit for PIC. And so that's going to be my plan is to get into schools. I was at Killaloo last week and met the chair, and I think I recruited her to PIC. And so that's what I'm planning on doing from January until March.
Yeah,
Because it's very important that we do have a variety of parental representation on PIC. And then once sort of I complete that recruitment phase, I'm going to talk to that group about their preference for the meeting format, because I am curious about going to a strictly virtual format. I say that because the hybrid model doesn't work well for the people who are online. They sort of feel like they're a little bit disconnected from the group in the room. In this case, I was the one that was in the minority. But in September, we had like an informal PIC meeting because of the transportation situation, and we were all virtual. And I just I find myself, that's just a personal preference, but I find it works better either for all virtual or all in person. I find the hybrid model is, and I know we do it for board meetings for, to accommodate people, but I find one or the other tends to work better. And for families, for parents who live across, a large geographic area and who have children at home, I'm wondering if it would feel more inclusive and equitable if we were all virtual. And so I'm thinking about proposing that, but after I've recruited some new membership, and then I'll see what their preference is for the group.
Any comments or questions? Go ahead, Dave.
Did we ever find out whether or not PIC is just for, parent council chairs, or whether it's open to parents?
I haven't looked at the actual, I will look at the ministry guidelines around that, but we did put it up on our signs for this past year to advertise.
Because I know when PIC was really popular, like, I mean, we had the big session every year. I seem to recall that it was parents as well. It wasn't just parent council chairs.
Yeah.
And that might expand. I don't know if that's what people are thinking, but that, we talked about that a little bit. We could find out that might expand the, yeah. And I personally, because I've attended so many virtual meetings, it is not the same when you're up there. So, I don't know what the committee will decide, but I would let them know that, I mean, if I'm at the next meeting, I'm supposed to be at the next meeting.
Yeah.
I'll mention that because it's just not the same. Yeah. You do feel disconnected,
Yeah.
in my opinion, anyway.
Go ahead, Mike.
Just a thought. I don't know how feasible this is, but it might be interesting that if you try both the virtual for a while, but also the in-house. So just to see and also get some feedback. Just, I mean, there's how many PIC meetings are there a year?
Minimum of 4.
Okay.
Yeah, minimum of 4.
So I'm just saying it might take a while to get some interesting feedback, but rather to go all virtual or all in-house, I do agree with Dave, what could expand our numbers for input. I mean, the devil's advocate in me says, providing the parents or who's ever there are there for the right reasons.
Yeah.
That's the biggie with me.
Sure.
Thank
you for the feedback.
And I agree. I think the discussion around virtual might actually help you recruit more members too, if they knew that everybody was going to be virtual. Because you're right, it is easier to do all one or all the other. But we know that there are times like today and every other board meeting where, it just works works to have people both in person and virtual. So thank you for that. That's excellent. I guess I do need a motion to receive this report. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Trustee Kaiser, thank you very much. And seconded by Trustee Gannett. All those in favor of receiving this report? And that's carried. Thank you. Sorry, I just had a bit of a brain freeze there, Dean. Somebody I know. Hey, SEAC, Special Education Advisory Committee, and I believe Trustee Gannett, Mike, you were there.
Yes, I'll just start off by saying our newest member just introduced me. Susan's going to be sitting on the committee, which is great. I mentioned that although she wasn't there at the last meeting, that they were all pleased to hear about it and have you attend. First, I just wanted to mention we met on Wednesday, November 27th, 2024. There was a presentation given by Facilities Manager Bill Murray and Jessica Puff, our Human Rights Anti-Oppression Principal, and it was on accessibility. Basically, Bill talked about sort of auditing and how things will work. And it was really nice to see him just sort of, as Bill does, walk through things and make things that appear somewhat complicated to organize. He simplifies things. He did mention to me that it's part of the $1.5 million budget. It's connected to the board's accessibility plan. He did talk about a couple of projects that are fairly large coming up, and two in particular for Armpire District High School, Front Entrance, and Mackenzie Community School. There's front entrance issues there that they're going to be doing their best to deal with. Also, the goal is to have washrooms on every floor, which in every school isn't the case. Also mentioned, I found this interesting, that the RCDSB, through our principals, will also do a basic school audit regarding accessibility. He's not sure. I think this is a first. First school done, he believes, is AJ Charbonneau. Done or going to be done. Not sure about that. Just a few words to say regarding associations, association reports. Sarah Tate, one of our community members, talked about Easter seals regarding an equipment fund and access through a website. She statistically said there were 33 grants at $750 each handed out. I think upcoming December 19th is our EQAO assessment of students' needs with the board. One of the members brought up the issue that although EQAO is very, very important, questioning is that sort of the main baseline, or should that be the be all end all? Because there are some students that sort of have unique ways to, or their uniqueness makes them a unique way to be assessed. PMFRC community spaces regarding Xmas parties. They're looking for more spaces. That was brought up. And they wanted to mention that in September, there's going to be probably the highest rate of deployment in the Petawawa area. It's going to be, so that affects families and students, et cetera, et cetera. That was brought up. Lastly, Ainsley from CAS. She plans on giving an overview of the program of FASD, fetal alcohol syndrome. And out of curiosity, I did ask if it could be worked in that I could attend. It's always been something that's been interesting that I've found. And she wants to do a staff in-service for those who wish to attend with the RCDSB. There's no date set or anything, but it could be very valuable for our staff. She sounds quite expertise in that area. And I'm looking forward to the staff being in-serviced on that. I don't know what the interest is going to be. And I think that concludes my report. And I move that the board receive this report.
Thanks very much, Mike. Do I have a seconder to receive this report?
Unless there are any questions.
Trustee Reggiani, thank you. Any questions for Mike?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of receiving the report? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Excellent. Okay, there's no report from SAL or discipline or committee of the whole. Policy review is meeting later this week. Director's review, nothing to report at this point. And Indigenous Education Advisory, I don't think we have anything to report. There hasn't been a meeting since our last board meeting either. So other committees, we've got Student Senate meeting, and so I guess Trustee Dobson, if I could ask you to report on that, please.
This was the first time that we actually had an in-house, so it was great to see the student senate in person. I can't speak highly enough about how Grace and Sydney ran the meeting. Was awesome. I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview of things that we discussed, and I'm sure Grace and Sydney will elaborate on a few of the things. As far as their agenda, we discussed mental health issues, initiatives. They had a student election for positions. They had open forum where they gave feedback as to things that were going well in their schools. And then we had two additional activities. Student achievement plan we discussed, where they discussed a number of issues like how communication can be improved with families. They discussed the final grade assessment, where 30% of their grade is for their final exam. They also discussed how assessment and reporting could be improved for parents. And then we presented 3 questions for the Student Senate for feedback. And I'll give you the questions. The answers they were incredible. If you do want a copy, we can, I think Grace has a copy on record. The first question we asked was, what specific barriers do you think are most limiting student success in your schools? We had some great responses. Second question was, in our student achievement plan, supporting mental health and well-being is a key priority. What are some effective strategies or programs that you think could help improve students' mental health and reduce stress in your school? And the third one was, what are some innovative strategies or initiatives that you believe could help improve student engagement and academic success? I can't speak volumes about, some of the responses were outstanding. I think Superintendent Koski said that some of these responses were better than some of that she got from some of the adults. But it was amazing, the responses. I also just asked Trustee Ruddy, it was your first time with the Student Senate. That I've been there for 2 years. Did you want to give some quick feedback before we turn it over to Grace and Sydney?
And I will be really quick because I'd rather hear from them than me. So I love the introduction to the meeting, and I'm looking forward to attending more. I really enjoyed the people who were there. So thank you.
So Grace and Sydney, I think we'll turn it over to you. I know that you'll probably elaborate on some of these points. I think it's all recorded, so if anyone would like a copy, we could send out all of the responses.
Okay, we'll turn it over to you too.
All right, so a few big things. This past month has been filled with meetings and incredible learning experiences for Sydney and I. In early November, Sydney and I had the opportunity to attend Osta ACO's fall general meeting, where we met with other student trustees from all across Ontario representing the RCDSB, as well as sharing solutions to student issues and sharing ideas for initiatives we can bring back to our school boards. We also heard from some fantastic keynote speakers, such as OPSPA and People for Education, and we gained PD on topics like media training, mental health, and networking skills. On November 28th, we held our first in-person Senate meeting where we discussed key topics, including potential revisions to the Growing Success document, evaluation and reporting in Ontario schools, the mental health initiative, and the RCDSB student achievement plan. Grace and I also briefed students on their roles as senators and elected our equity liaison, secretary, and communications officer. We had open forum, which allowed students to share important issues from their school, offering valuable insights, and we are very excited for the year ahead with such a dedicated group of students. And so at the end of November, the mental health initiative, which I've been working on, to increase student awareness and accessibility to mental health resources, was rolled out in all 7 RCDSB high schools. So I'd like to extend a big thank you to Gail Corbin, Lisa LaRiviere, Superintendent Smith, the RCDSB mental health staff, student senators, and everyone else who supported this project.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Any comments, questions for either Dave or Sydney or Grace? Go ahead, Mike.
Just more comment. in about 5 years, please get in touch with the trustees because we'd like to know what you're doing and where you are.
Just-
We may hear about you publicly, but we'd still like to be kept in the loop.
We'll follow them on LinkedIn. Exactly.
Thank you.
Not Facebook, but LinkedIn. Carthy, go ahead.
To get the responses, yeah.
Yes, so maybe you could share them with all of us if you don't mind, Grace. Could you send them around? Of course, yeah. To all of us, not right this moment, but that would be really helpful. Sounds like there were some really questions, or like they're quite in-depth questions, and it would be nice to know what the comments were. And I was wondering how, you know, I know you'd like them as well, Kristen, if you haven't seen them already, just to get some sense of what you're hearing that maybe we missed along the way. Who knows, right? Excellent. Okay, so
I asked if we accept my.
absolutely. Would you do that? So you're making a motion to receive the report. Thank you, Dave. Do I have a seconder? Trustee Doherty. Thank you, Kim. Any other questions for either Dave or for Grace or Sydney? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of receiving this report? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Perfect. Okay. Calendar committee.
Okay.
I'm going to turn it over to you, Jacqueline.
Thank you. This will be just a brief verbal update in regards to the committee meeting. So we did have a school calendar committee meeting on November 26th. The calendar committee meeting did follow a committee meeting that was held at Renfrew County Catholic on November the 12th. Every year we take turns on which board is going to be the lead. So this year Renfrew County Catholic was the lead. We took their recommendations and I attend their first meeting, and then the superintendent from their district attends ours and shared the recommendations. It went very well. There are very few, actually there were no disagreements on any of the dates chosen, and we are probably going to have an easy time moving forward. I will let you know that my next steps is I will present it to exec, and then in January, it's a formal report at board, and at which point we'll be looking for approval of the calendar.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. David.
Jacqueline, just having sat on that committee that passed, the one issue that was at one time, we fixed it this year, but I think it was based on calendar, is that group, the group of not occasional teachers, but the school support counselors and ECEs, they
That's
miss a
correct.
day's pay.
Right.
So are we going to use the safety day on the Tuesday like we did this year? And
We're starting, if it goes through.
like it's unfair to them to lose that pay.
No, that's right. And so it was really like the way the calendar falls for next year is just, there was no big discussion to be had because it just made sense. So it will start with the PD day on the Tuesday, and then the Wednesday will be the first day of school. And at the end of the year, Dave, also to assist with that pay piece, is we're actually going to be able to end right at June 30th, which means it does assist them as well in their EI piece, so it doesn't carry over into another week. And I do feel like, not having been formally involved in the meetings in the past, but having been party to conversations, that all the members and groups have a really great understanding of that now, and are even mentioning it, even if they aren't that representative. So I think people want to do the best by everybody.
Good. That's good to hear.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Lots. Great. Thanks for that clarification. Yeah, I think the calendar just kind of made it easy this year.
It did, yeah.
September 1st is a Sunday, I think, and
Yeah, just sometimes it's just the way it rolls, right? So
it's
it's
never.
a good introduction for me because it's like, oh, that was easy.
There might not be.
That's
One
right.
never knows.
That's right.
Thank you for that, Jacqueline. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
We look forward to seeing that coming back in January. Ontario Public School Board Association, just a couple of quick things. I know Carthy was able to join on virtually this time, which is a bit challenging. Because it's, it's a board of directors of 50 people around a table and maybe half a dozen virtual. So I know that it's.
And I didn't get connected properly and all this. And again, next day morning also I was able to connect, but I have other commitment. After 12 o'clock, I have to leave. I have to go see the World Multicultural Festival in Ottawa. So I went for that. And And on the agenda, I didn't notice, I have to admit that. It's, so I didn't prepare for the report today. It is sent by email, all the information. I can forward the email.
I think it goes directly to trustees anyway,
Trustees, okay.
right from Lisa. I think she sent, as far as I understand, it goes to all trustees automatically. It's a 4-page summary of the report. Am I correct in that, or I'm quite sure it does.
I think I always forwarded it.
The review, like
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah, I think I always forward.
Okay, well, maybe forward it again. just
Okay,
in
I will
case.
forward it.
Yeah,
It's
probably.
my mistake, I didn't notice.
Yeah.
Without glasses, maybe I was looking at it. I'm sorry.
It is
I'll
just,
forward it.
it's just a 4-page
Yeah.
summary of sort of some
I'll forward it.
conversations. I was there as well. I was there in person, of course. So I did have a couple of other things that I thought I might just bring to your attention. The education program work group, which is we have 2 people from Eastern Region, Lynn Scott out of Ottawa, Carleton, and Karen McGregor from Limestone. They're working on a number of things, including EQAO information, core funding, core education funding. OPSPA always submits a major paper around the core education funding, highlighting all of the things that they've heard from their member boards that are issues. So they have done that. They also has someone come in from the Ontario e-learning consortium. There are 57 boards that are currently involved in that. I think most of you are aware of that consortium. And artificial intelligence, Shane Gonzalez, who's the, I can't remember his title, but he's with OPSPA and he's very good. He is going to, and he along with this group are going to be pulling together information from boards across the province on what they already have done or are working on with regards to policies on AI. So that will be something helpful to take a look at. And I believe it's Lambton Kent already has an AI policy completed on their website. So again, something, it's always nice to look at what else people are saying, right? So that is one piece. And there is also a policy development work group. And on the Eastern Region, Michelle Levante from Upper Canada and who else is there from our area? Amanda Robertson from Hastings Prince Edward. They're both on the policy development work group. And again, they're working on core education funding submission, doing a submission, working with Municipal Elections Act with regards to doing some work to perhaps make the elections of trustees a little more visible along with the municipal elections as well. Some information on integrity commissioners. And again, AI was on that list too. And then just on the local school board governance, we had some conversation around, you probably will recall back in the summer, there was a couple of new regulations that came out from the ministry. One was around the use of integrity commissioners when trustees had some code of conduct issues within the board, if they couldn't be handled locally and informally, they had to go to an integrity commissioner. That's taking place as of January 1. And then there is also some work that we need to do on the policy review committee around electronic meetings and meeting attendance, because there was a new regulation again around attending virtually. Doesn't come into play till September of 25, so we've got a little time to work on it. But it's around actually letting the chair know well ahead of time that you're going to come in virtually, but there are only 5 reasons that you can come in virtually. And they are things like distance from the board, health, whether I think family responsibilities and something else. I can't remember what it is. Anyway, stay tuned. You'll be hearing more about that, but that's being worked on as well. And lots of discussion around public education symposium the end of January. So I hope some of you are going to come to that. There's going to be some really good speakers. Registration's open. But you should book your room if you are getting there, because that's great. It's going to be a great event as usual. The only other thing I'll briefly mention, and I'll if you want more details on it later, I can give it to you, is that we had a presentation from RTOERO, I don't remember what it stands for, what ERO stands for. It's Retired Teachers of Ontario Employee, what would the ERO?
The ERO, unless it's.
I don't remember.
Elementary.
Actually,
Or is it the French?
It,
Like
no,
it's slash.
it has to do with insurance. It has to do with health insurance.
Yeah.
So, this group is working with OSPA to just create an agreement so that trustees could actually participate in purchasing health insurance for yourself, your family, or whatever. And, you know, for some trustees, that could be very useful if you don't already have one. So it's something to think about. And again, you'll get more information on it, but it's coming. And there's a couple of really good things about it. One, on the travel insurance side, is that the premiums do not increase as you get older, which I have discovered is a bit of an issue as one gets older. So anyway, there's some things to think about on that. Imagine that. Okay, so that's just a quick update, and Carthy will share that summary of the minutes from the minutes, right, from the board of directors meeting.
Yeah.
You already done that? Okay, perfect. Okay. So that's the good, the bad, the ugly around that. Renfrew County Joint Transportation Consortium, I don't think we have a report. We haven't had a meeting from that perspective. Yes. Staff report for FSL. I have one. Sure. We just read as teachers here. Yes. Okay. Social media litigation. It's just under. Sure. And then just that one. Why don't we do that? Yes. I don't have a problem with that. Okay. We're just going to rejig the agenda items, if you don't mind. We're going to keep the open session kind of up front. Well, at least the board action plan for French as a second language. And then we'll go into the closed and the other piece of open, because it's all connected around the social media litigation. So let's move on then to the board action plan for French as a second language. And I'm going to turn it over to somebody.
Sure.
I'm going to turn it over to Carrie.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I believe you have Principal McPhee with you as well. So we'll look forward to hearing your presentation. Thank you.
So first, my pleasure to introduce Sarah McPhee, who's our principal of curriculum K-12. She's going to give an overview of our 3-year French strategic plan that the ministry had outlined from 2021 to 2024. So currently that ministry plan is ending. And we don't have an update on what the ministry is working on. So she's going to give an overview of that, as well as French as a second language within our school board and some next steps that we're working on.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Carrie. Thanks for having me here today. So as Carrie mentioned, we have a 3-year FSL plan that's now coming to an end, and the ministry has not kind of given us any direction, but we hope to hear something soon. You all have a copy of hopefully the report, and so you have a copy of the background, which includes the 3 ministry goals, and as well as our 8 goals that our board has decided on over the past 3 years and has aligned with those 3 ministry goals. So briefly, ministry goal 1 is to increase student confidence, proficiency, and achievement in FSL. And we have 2 goals under that ministry goal. Ministry goal 2, increase the percentage of students studying until graduation. And again, 2 goals under there. And then for goal 3, increase student, parent, educator, and community engagement in FSL, with another 4 goals for our board under that one. And just as some background, so the current curriculum is based on the Common European Framework for Languages. So that's the CEFR. And this is, I guess, a way of understanding language and organizing language from simple to complex when you're acquiring a second language. It provides guidelines for educators on how to establish proficiency in a second language. And a lot of it's around descriptors and can-do statements. What can students actually do in the target language? So that's just a little background on what the CEFR. You'll see it mentioned a few times in here. I'm going to jump to current status a little bit. So we had our 8 goals that were aligned with the ministry, and
I'm just going to talk to a few of the key actions and impacts. So extended French immersion was expanded in the district, and most recently there's two schools, so Highview and Mackenzie. And you heard from Mackenzie earlier today with Megan and Carissa. And the program services staff have supported all the above goals through PD, through resources, and coaching in the classroom. And the third one there, I just want to speak to the increase in FSL credits, because I think that's an important indicator of the expansion of our program and how it's impacted the secondary system. So you can see there very clearly in the report, from 1,369 credits in 2022 to 1,502 credits in 2024. So we are expanding our French offerings and our number of students that are enrolling. And that's, I believe, a direct impact because we've increased our French program and expanded it. Most of my time, hopefully, is to talk about the DELF, because we have some great data about the DELF, and maybe I can give you a little bit of background, if you don't already have it, about the DELF and the levels. So the DELF, again, stands for the diplôme. I'm going to forget. Yes. So the DELF, it's a language diploma in French specifically. It's based on the CEFR. So that's why I mentioned the CEFR earlier. So the levels start with A1 as the most simple and the most basic level, and they proceed to C2. And our district, I have a brief outline of each level, if that would be helpful. So A1 recognizes basic language ability, where the user can interact in a very simple way. A2 would recognize the linguistic competency of a basic user who can communicate socially. B1 is a language user who can manage with some independence in most situations encountered when traveling. And B2 is a language user who is able to communicate independently in most situations, construct arguments, defend opinions, explain viewpoints, and negotiate. And C1 and C2 are both proficient user categories, and often they are well into the academic realm, well into the university studies, research realms, and translation. Okay. So our district offers any grade 12 student the opportunity to challenge the DELF, and they actually have to choose, with guidance from their teacher, what level that they would like to kind of challenge. And most of our grade 12 teachers have had training in the DELF and the CEFR, so they understand well the levels and they can coach the students into kind of matching that to their abilities. But our results, we have about 80 to 90 students that challenge the DELF over the past few years, and a very high success rate. Like you can see in the table and it's also in the district or the director's report. And the levels that we offer are A2, B1, and B2. So I think the data speaks to, especially in B2, a lot of proficiency there. The ones that they're in or B2, they're solidly in B2. But a lot of time and energy goes into preparing for the DELF in our classrooms, and also we require a lot of people that are trained as the correcteur. They're volunteering their time out of the classroom to also help, and because they know it's important, right? It's an important thing to have post-secondary. I'm going to keep going. Okay, good. We have one inspired learning coach who is FSL, with a lot of FSL background. And so she is supporting, and she's just finished with all the DELF things. And so now she's going to be able to return to some other things, district level kind of PD, organizing PD and supporting classrooms when possible. I'm going to jump into next steps, if that's good. That's perfect. Okay. Yeah. So next steps, since we don't have any clear direction from the ministry, we're kind of going on where we were, how we manage with the goals that the ministry had outlined, and just feedback from both administrators and teachers and students too about where they're at. So we are focusing on, as Megan mentioned, some improving the student engagement through this spontaneous oral communication that she mentioned called the ANL. And if I could just really organize it for you in a way that's really clear, in terms of French, the what is the curriculum. So that's what you teach is the curriculum. The why is the CEFR. And the how is the ANL. So it's really applicable strategies to how to teach proficiency and engagement in French and how to get kids talking. And I've actually used it in my own practice in the past as a French teacher and found it to be extremely powerful. So we are bringing this training to teachers. We had an overview of it on the PA Day for interested teachers in October. And we started with a collaboration with RCCDSB and offered 2 days in June and the following 2 days in September. So we had another 8 RCDSB educator trained in ANL. And then just now in November and December, we had another round of training for our educators. And most of those educators were in the elementary realm. And so we're looking now at how can we expand this into secondary, especially in our transition years, so 7 to 12. And looking especially at the grade 9 cohorts that are coming in and needing to get some fresh engagement in grade 9 French. So that's the ANL, the first one. And we're going to continue with the DELF and hopefully continue to offer that in our secondary sites. And as Megan mentioned, how can we kind of bring it down to the 7 and 8 level to let them understand a little bit about what it's about. And then under assessment and parent outreach, it's in the document, but looking again at connections to growing through success and assessment for as learning and updating the website so parents can understand all about our programming and what great options we have at the RCDSB.
Great. Thank you very much, Sarah. Any other questions, any questions, comments, wonderings? Yes, Mike.
So it's interesting. My son works for the federal government, and I would consider his French strong, not exceptional. And he told me last year, he says, my 5 years is coming up. I said, what do you mean? He says, I still have to write a French proficiency exam with the federal government because I'm like a notch away from being exempt. So fortunately, he's married to someone whose first language is French. So they still use a lot of French, but his real goal is to get just, he's like that close. And he says, geez, I'd really like this to go away. Not that he's worried about not doing well, but he'd rather not every 5 years go through it.
Yes.
So
They're probably using those ratings, right? The A1 to C2.
Whatever they're using, I don't know the technical term, but I'm just letting you know that like in the real world, pass on to your students, even depending on what they're going to do, especially if it's government, federal, they still, you can't escape it. And they've got you on the computer and in 5 years, you're going to rewrite. So just a note.
Yeah.
Thanks.
David, go ahead.
Is our number one challenge still acquiring French teachers? Is that still the number one challenge of our French program, or where are we with that these days?
That's a good question.
I don't know. Look at that.
Say yes and no. So I feel like we've alleviated a lot of pressure. Like my first couple of years in human resources, we had a whiteboard full of spots that we needed to fill with qualified teachers. And this year we've just kind of hovered around 1. So that's a huge improvement.
Wow.
Yes, so that's making a big difference. I think part of that has to do with our restructure. Part of it has to do with the advocacy from, both provincially, the EOSDN, Queen's University working with us to try and get people who would want to come and teach French as well. But I'm not feeling the pressure in the human resources department that I felt the first 2 years of my role did, for sure. So.
Great.
That's definitely great news because it was a huge concern, particularly when we expanded it into the secondary level.
And we won't keep our foot on the pedal kind of thing. We won't take our eye off of that, but it's just good to be feeling better about the situations we're in currently.
That's good.
Excellent. Good job. Well, yeah, I just like to make one point of clarification. And thank you. That was a very great summary of all the work being done in French as a second language. So for the DEL, the students who are able to take that assessment are students who study French up to grade 12. So they must take grade 12, and it can be core French, extended French, or French immersion, but they must take that level 4 credit. And then they're eligible to take the DELF and hopefully pass and get their certificates. So I just wanted to clarify that part. Okay, that's great. Thank you. So our goal then would be to continue to increase our numbers, like through the expansion of French immersion. ideally, because we're still in the elementary stages, right? Like with some of the schools, in terms of expansion. So as those grades move up into secondary, and then we get more students studying beyond grade 9 and hopefully to grade 12, then we should see an increase even more in the number of students challenging the Delta.
It's nice to see that they're successful, that we have such a high level of success too, right? I mean, yes, the numbers are coming, but the success rate is very strong. So that speaks well to our educators and how hard they're working with making sure our students are getting what they need, that's for sure. Any other comments or questions?
Nobody else does. I have another.
You have another question. Absolutely, David.
Just because this was something that I worked on for many, many years as a trustee, but I think it's more for Jacqueline. So one of the things that we looked at with French immersion was, whether people like to hear or not, is it was a way to outcompete the Catholic board and get more elementary students in our system, which worked extremely well the first few years. So I know that we had to adjust the program a little bit. We had some conversations about that. Are we still at the point where we are outdoing the Catholic board with our French immersion program? And are we still seeing the numbers in the JK and SK like we were 3 years ago?
Right. So I'm going to let Kristen answer whether she feels our numbers are still there as a result. So I'll turn.
I do believe I forwarded the enrollment proportion data to all trustees. And that shows 10 years worth of data, and it looks at the proportion by school board across Renfrew County. And what we saw is about the first 5 years, there was a decline, and there were a variety of contributing factors there. For example, perhaps the establishment of a French public school, right, in the county. Then it leveled off for a number of years where we were sort of not losing, but not gaining. And then in the last 2, we've been increasing the proportion. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what all the factors are that would be causing an increase, but we are now seeing an increase in the proportion of students in Renfrew County that our CDSB has from K to 12. Certainly the expansion of French immersion is of interest to families. And we know through, like, for example, the engagement sessions that we had last year at Mackenzie Community School in Highview.
Absolutely.
Right? Like
The Highview one was excellent.
Yeah, and so, we're receiving positive feedback there. And we are also looking at, we have a little committee that's starting an analysis of retention data. So not only do we want to have very healthy numbers for JK registration, but we also want to retain students all the way through to grade 12. And so as we start down that path of looking at retention data, we're also going to look at retention in FSL. And so if they start off in early French immersion, are they staying in that program all the way through their academic career? I think what will happen as well is through the strategic plan consultations that are going to happen in the spring, I'm hoping that we will hear feedback about the offerings that we have, because we are seeing it, we were on a decline with enrollment proportion, then it was constant, and now we're on an incline. So hopefully we will receive anecdotal feedback from strategic plan consultations to hear what are the contributing factors to that.
Right. And one of the commitments we made, which I think helps with that retention, and I'm hoping it's still part of the plan, is to make sure that the program, like especially the Delford, was offered in high school. So, telling a family that their child can just go to grade 8 for French immersion and then they're done was something we talked a lot about, and having the confidence to tell them it's extended right through to high school would help. I think, I hope that's still part of the plan for it.
It is.
Jacqueline, as our program, do you think it's still superior to the Catholic? I mean, I know that's what we set out to do, was to make it something that would draw students to our board that they didn't offer. Now, I know that they've upped their ante a little bit, but I don't really know what they've done. And I know we've changed ours, restructured it a little bit. I want to know that we still have an advantage, I guess, is my question. Do we?
I think we offer a different program, and so that, it's not the same as Renfrew County Catholic.
in terms of what they're offering.
And if it's clear that it's available right through their entire career, I think that speaks a lot to it. And I agree, David, that was a lot of conversation even a few years ago about we need to be able to make sure that they can take it right through to grade 12.
And I'll just add, and across all 7 families of schools.
Yes.
Right, which I know was a huge priority
Yeah.
for trustees,
It's
which was equitable access to the programming.
Yeah.
And that's why this expansion has happened as well.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Mike.
If I just wanted to add one thing, to what degree, I don't know, but this is to me a perfect spotlight for our communications department. That we keep the pedal to the metal when it comes to exactly what we're doing, like JK to 12 as example. It's almost like they get to the point where, I've already heard that. It's almost ingrained in our county. I think that's really, really key.
So continue that strong communication that this is
Strong,
offering
strong,
that we
Really
are-
strong.
we will provide this to your child.
Yeah.
Till they graduate. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much, Carrie. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate the update. And hopefully we'll hear from the ministry at some point in time, but in the meantime, we'll carry on with the good work, right?
Sure.
So that's excellent. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, we just have 2 other items, I think, on our agenda, more or less, and we do need to go into closed. So if we could go into closed, I need a motion to move into closed, and I believe, thank you very much, Kim, and seconded by Kirthy. And all those in favor of moving into closed session, and that is carried, so we'll just need to start our recording again. Thank you very much. So we are back in open session, and we have just one final report for our meeting today, and that is a social media litigation report, and I'll turn it over to Director Mimi.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to provide trustees with an update about our CDSV's participation in the mass tort, which is litigation against social media companies. And there, as many of you are aware, there's been a growing concern regarding the impact of social media on the mental health and well-being of students. And a coalition of Ontario school boards has joined a mass tort with a legal firm, which started in March of 2024 with 4 large school boards in Ontario. They're listed in your report. Since then, quite a number of additional school boards have joined. Small, medium, and large school boards have joined the mass tort. Some of them are listed in the report. And Renfrew County District School Board is planning on joining this mass tort along with all of the other boards that are already part of it. We have consulted with many of the boards that are listed on a number of factors. For example, we explored how their experience has been so far, the workload for staff, and also just which boards are being consulted more for the litigation. We did have a draft contract reviewed by our own legal counsel. They have no concerns. They spoke very highly of the legal firm that is leading this mass tort. And so it is our position that we should join at this time. We were given a deadline of December 15th to communicate with 9C. That is the company that is leading this litigation. We were given a deadline of December 15th, and we are looking to our Board of Trustees to endorse our participation in the mass tort.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I'll put the recommendation on the table, and then if anybody has any questions, we can carry them at that time. So the recommendation is that the Renfrew County District School Board of Trustees endorse RCDSB's participation in the mass tort litigation against social media companies. Do I have a seconder for that? Trustee Doherty, thank you. Any questions or comments? I think it speaks well that we recognize that this is an issue across our district and across the province and across the world, actually. So I think it's very wise that we are considering that. So all in favor of supporting this endorsement of joining our of the litigation, and that is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you for bringing that report, and thank you for the update on that. So we'll look forward to hearing more. Yes, as time goes on. Excellent. Thank you. We have no correspondence, just a couple of quick things under other business. Kristen, I'll turn to you first, and then I'll turn to Carthy after.
Wonderful. I just wanted to highlight that a schedule of all the holiday events across the RCDSB was shared with all of Executive Council and trustees. And just wanted to give a huge shout out to our staff and our students for all of the work that they put into celebrating the holidays. I did attend one of the concerts at Champlain Discovery School today, and lots of joy in the gym. And, you know, heard everything from the choir sing some beautiful songs to some little skits to some other song. I saw one that was a Nutcracker performance to that traditional Nutcracker song, but they had paper plates and they were clapping their paper plates together to the beat of the song with different actions. I had never seen anything like it, and it was very, very well done. So if you Google that, you might, because they were following a YouTube video. So if you Google it, you might find it. It was pretty cool. I've never, in all my years, I have not seen that. So that was unique today. And hoping to get to some other events over the next week and a half. But I just wanted to highlight that for you and definitely thank our staff and our students for the time that they put into those events. Absolutely. And for Trustee Regimani, I know you attended something.
Yes, and I attended a parents' council meeting in Ballard School, and it was a good experience for me to meet with parents and what is going on with the parents' involvement in the school. Really impressive. And also I attended they have winter theme door decoration competition, and in the parents council meeting they came up with the idea and they asked whether I can be one of the judge, and I agreed to go for that. And it was real pleasure to be there, and it brought a lot of good memories, and also looking through all the doors, kids came up with variety of ideas, and I can't even imagine so many things they did, and it was really a wonderful time I had with the my co-judges, and one of the Lumber King. Three of the guys were there, and students got very much excited, and they were the popular ones than the doors. Everybody was going and getting autograph from them, and also the police officer was with me too, like Sean was with me. Then we had really good time discussing which one is good and all that, and lot of creativity, lots and lots of creativity. And they had different categories, and the grade 11 and 12, and they had really came up with the math concept as a sledge, and also the another class came up with the tree with carbon dioxide photosynthesis and all that. It was very impressive, and I really enjoyed, and I was thanking principal for inviting me for that, and yeah, I would love to go back.
Next year, you'll probably be invited back. Dave, go ahead.
I attended the luncheon at Fellows High School, the co-op. That was really good. I really enjoyed it.
Good.
I was going to try to go to Discovery, and there were so many people outside. I couldn't find a parking space today. It was a huge crowd.
It was.
So regarding Champlain Discovery, I couldn't go today, and I knew that. I had dropped something off to Mike Popke, and I noticed that they were starting to go into the assembly. And I said, "What's going on, Mike?" He says, "Well, it's the where they get the bugs out and stuff." So do you mind if I sit at the back for a while? I was probably there for an hour, and it went by like that. I just sat at the back just as a sort of a little fly on the wall, and I just enjoyed the atmosphere. Talked to a couple of teachers I knew, but that's their free. But most of them they sort of rehearsed the day before, and it was well done. A lot of enthusiasm, which is great.
That's great.
'Cause I knew I couldn't go today.
Anything exciting happening in your schools that you wanted to share about Christmas?
I know
Holiday season?
AHS is planning a holiday variety show on the 20th. And a spirit week next week.
Nice. Thank you, Grace.
MCS is pretty similar, and we have our student teacher hockey game, which is our annual tradition coming up soon, which is really great.
Lots of great things happening across the district, that's for sure. So that's good. Excellent. Thank you for sharing all of that. Okay, and I think with that, I'll just finish up here, sort of as we approach the holiday season. I really want to express my heartfelt gratitude to all members of our community, To our educators, staff, administrators, and support workers, each of you plays an essential role in shaping our schools and supporting the success and well-being of our students. To those working behind the scenes in our offices and facilities, your commitment ensures that our spaces are safe, welcoming, and functional every day. Whether you're celebrating a holiday, taking time to rest, or cherishing moments with loved ones, I hope this season brings joy and renewal to you all. And thank you for everything you do every single day. You do make a difference in our students' lives. And with that, I require a mover and a seconder to adjourn the meeting. Oh, and seconded by trustee Benjamin. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Christina.
Have fun, guys.